I watched both of the Nexium things like back to back.
Yeah.
And I didn't love the HBO one because I was like 5 episodes in and was like,
fucking
I don't
boring.
even understand what they were
doing
teaching these people. Like what was going on? And then I watched the other one, which was so much better.
That's what I heard. I didn't see it, but I think it's also just like a really boring cult and boring people.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's like, but yeah, I totally agree. No, that HBO.
It's boring except for that one really fucked up thing.
The one detail. Yeah.
Yeah.
We branded a bunch of women. That's cool.
Yeah.
Who thought Keith Raniere was smart? That's what I want to know.
Who knows?
I don't know. Hey, Chelsea.
Hey, Victoria.
You know what I need?
What?
A breath of fresh movie.
Yo, that's crazy because that's what I need too.
That's a movie I like to see.
You're listening to A Breath of Fresh Movie. I'm one of your hosts, Victoria Harley.
I'm the other one, Chelsea Pope.
That's her. And that's
me.
me.
That's you.
This is a podcast where we watch a movie that neither of us, and sometimes a guest, have never seen before. And then we talk about it. That's it.
That's it.
And this week we're doing the 1967 film Playtime, directed by Jacques Tati. Yes, we indeed. And we have a guest with us this week, Brandon Beck.
Hi, everybody. Hold on one second. Let me quickly turn off my incredibly elaborate intercom. All right, cool. I'm good.
I
Cool.
get it. I get it.
That was a good reference.
I got what you did there.
That's good.
Okay, let me just sit back down into my chair real quick.
Those chairs.
Those chairs.
And a third beat on that joke.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have one.
Yeah. What would the third beat of that joke be? Walking through a window you thought was an open door.
Yes, exactly. That's probably the closest.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I loved this movie so much.
When you hear the phrase Playtime, what do you think of?
Hoo-yah.
Yeah, right? He's so delightful.
You like him?
The first thing that I noticed about the way he moves is that he moves like a dancer.
Yes.
Like, if you just watch him, even just like casually walking somewhere, like he effortlessly carves lines with his feet. He's got such a control over his body.
I respect that.
And I later learned that he directed every single actor on how to move. So, like, he essentially acted out this entire movie himself and then just had people copy everything except for the Hulo parts.
Wow.
Which kind of rules.
I mean, that's like, damn, that's a lot of work. Yeah.
You know what's lovely about that too, in spite of that, I mean, the meticulousness, I mean, it pays off in the effortlessness of how things are just moving seamlessly from shot to shot, you know. And then, I mean, you're talking about Hula. I just love the way that everybody say, Monsieur Hula, from the army.
From the army.
You remember me from the army. Come see me, meet my family. But like,
into my big apartment.
Yeah, right. And then, you know, but he, you know, just as you said, I mean, it was all very measured, but he reminded me in the best way of like a wacky waving inflatable floating arm man, just like going with the breeze. Because whenever someone just turned him one way, he just would continue forward, and that would be like, it'd be like just something that's in constant motion, and you just turn him and go. And like,
oh yeah, he's like if you put like a rubber duck into like a stream. He's just bobbing along, and like he's fully aware of what's going on, but the just like the power of modern life keeps pushing him along. Like when he's trying to leave some building at some point, and then that group of American tourist ladies come in, and he gets
turned around.
You see him like bobbling above them because he's
Absolutely.
so much taller. Like he's you know, on some rapids. It's, oh my god, it's so good.
Yeah,
So good.
it's so interesting though that you guys are responding so much to the physical performance, because I think I was just so hung up on like all the aspects of the production design.
Yes.
Because I mean, there's like repeating patterns galore. The palette is so restricted in color. Like it's like a black and white film, but it's shot in color.
yes.
Although somebody said that, and I didn't actually check this, in every shot there is some red.
Yes,
That
there
makes
were red
sense.
cars. There were sometimes the tourists had little red hats, or when he's in the waiting room, they have the
The
there's
little
like
red
lapel.
lapels. Yeah, which I
yeah. There's some red in the like creepy murder drugstore.
yeah.
goes to
Oh
for a
my
little while.
god, that food looked disgusting.
That food looked weird.
That was very like Beetlejuicy, right?
It was.
Yeah, there's some Technicolor weird foods with like lots of. I like that he picked like the very familiar looking, just like a hoagie. He's just like he picked like the one sandwichy thing. And there was another guy who did the same thing, and
Yeah.
then later at the end, I also liked when they leave the nightclub, everybody, and they're all kind of flooding into this drugstore, and then they have all their coats and whatnot. And at one point, people are like looking at, oh, you want to pick? We're gonna pick something. You hear people kind of like looking, and you hear mumbling about the food, and then suddenly you see Hulo reach down and lift like a mink off the ground, and, and there's some people and myself too watching it are like, oh, was that something? Was that food? And the lady's like, oh, ha, ha, and wraps it around herself, but
It was available for purchase.
Was that on the menu?
Yeah, it's at the automat. Yeah.
The thing that comes to mind the most while I was thinking, the word that comes to mind the most with this movie is patience, because like so much of comedy, especially physical comedy, is often based around like destruction or like injecting chaos into a state environment. And for the first hour of the movie, there's not really any chaos. Like it's this very like almost utopian sort of world where like everything is moving like clockwork. It's this ballet of people, and even though Hulo's in there and he's doing some gags, it all still feels very sort of measured and specific. And it's not until it goes from being daytime to nighttime and they get to the restaurant, I didn't realize until later, like they're in that cabaret for almost an hour.
It's half the movie. Yeah, it's half the movie. Yeah, it's
and, like,
a lot.
They introduce like a whole new cast of characters essentially at that point. That's when it starts to become truly chaotic. But because he's got such a mastery of just making you wait, even the chaos builds so slowly. You barely notice that suddenly they're all sweaty.
Right.
And that like the building starts to fall apart, and it all just feels so delicately staged chaos, which is almost impossible to pull off. In the best circumstance.
It's really difficult to like achieve randomness. Like that's not possible. I mean, it's funny how this movie, it is funny, and I did like have a couple little ha 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 moments, but it's like the comedy is almost diffused. Like it spreads it out, and this is like his wide shots. There are no close-ups in this whole movie. There's not a single close-up. Everything is wide or mid-shot, and it's really about like the actor and the performer having this full experience. And the only thing I really knew about this movie before was that there was this choreographed nature. I knew kind of going in like, okay, there's something about that. And at first I thought, wow, it's so choreographed. It's like obviously. And at first I kind of was like, oh, it's not that good. Like I was thinking about how choreography features in things like, a big movie like Singing in the Rain, where it's like it's insane what they achieve on a soundstage. But I realized like, oh, but no, I'm supposed to be cognizant of it being choreographed. Like it's not meant to look natural, I guess is what I'm saying. And it loses that rigidity when it goes from that day to night, like as you pointed out. And we see a lot more variation in color all of a sudden, and like a lot more is happening. I mean, as much as the world in the daytime was optimistic, I found it like so depressing. Just the palette and like the gray and the blue. I was like, ugh, on an aesthetic level. I found it more dystopian, I guess. I don't know.
I love that stuff. Like when you open a movie in like a brutalist French airport, I am like, sign me up.
You're into it.
Like it was basically just like, here's some procedural footage of air travel in the 60s, which is all I want to see anyway. So my shit. None of this existed. They built this entire place.
Oh yeah. No, Tativille. I do have some notes about the production. I mean, that's a good segue. Which is like, first of all, it took 3 fucking years.
Yeah.
So it was filmed from 1964 to 1967 on 70 millimeter. It was also employed stereophonic soundtrack, which at the time was very high tech. And if you think about the way sound is used in this movie, it's very Altman-like.
I was about to say, this felt like Altman doing like old school like pantomime.
Yeah, absolutely. At the time of its release, it was the most expensive French film ever made. It cost like 17 million francs, which at the time would have been $3.4 million. But that's in 1964. I didn't calculate for inflation, but it's a lot. It's a lot. And you're right. To do this, he built his own Paris, which became known as Tativille. He did it with an architect named Eugene Roman. It was built southeast of Paris, and it contained 2 steel and concrete buildings, streets with working traffic lights, a power plant, large photo facades to mimic like the Arc de Triomphe and the Eiffel Tower and all these other things. And it was just, cheap sets, right? Just big photos. Sure. And what was interesting was, he had this futuristic vision, but from 1964 and 1967, the world changed rapidly. Like the 60s were so that it almost became a little bit archaic immediately.
Yeah. For as much as it's forward thinking, it has a bit of a nostalgia to it.
Yeah, totally.
There's definitely... There's a melancholy to the whole thing that I think gives it a little more oomph. Even in the scenes where it's supposed to look like glistening and perfect, there is something a little
faded. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. No, and I mean, it was funny how often I was getting I hate to do this because obviously this film came out long before, but I'm it just felt like often a convention of Don Drapers or, and every service position held by a woman, she's basically dressed, she's dressed like a stewardess. Mm-hmm.
It's just as the time, for sure.
I loved that gag where he's in the accounting office and there's the phone, the receptionist in a little, a little glass box between the kiosks. And then he goes out of frame and then just the next row over and there's an identical kiosk with an almost identical woman. It's so weird and so funny.
And I mean, it's funny because we saw a lot of types or pairs at that restaurant. I feel like all the wealthy couples kind of look the same. All the men had the same kind of patterning baldness. All the women were wearing these furs and black and it definitely had it's definitely satirizing high society,
absolutely,
modernism, and all of that.
He sort of establishes this cast of characters that you keep seeing. You see that tourist group kind of over and over again, and kind of everybody crashes into the cabaret at the end. Mm-hmm. You see the same bus that they were all on at the beginning, and that same flower truck.
It kind of becomes comforting because I'm there it is, something I can hang on to. Yeah, I remember that. It's funny. I saw this quoted in multiple places. The critic Noel Birch said this film has to be seen not only several times, but from several different positions in the theater to be appreciated fully. I mean, I don't doubt that. I may not watch this again, though. I mean, because I'll be honest, I appreciate the achievement. I felt, I got a little itchy, though, in that second hour. I was sort of how much longer is this? Not to be a dick. I mean, I just am being honest about my own lack of ability to persist.
Yeah, no, full disclosure. I mean, this was a film that it took me 4 separate sittings to get through, and I would say I'm on the favorable side. I very much enjoyed this. There were certainly parts that were a little slower, but on the whole, there were the delights outweighed the slumps. However, within that first 15 minutes, I think that I turned this on at 2 a.m. and I was pretty high and tired, and I think at that 15-minute mark, I was like, God, I'm just not in the headspace where I'm going to appreciate what's happening here, and I want to try and give this 100%. So then I didn't tune. So I turned it off. Started watching it the next day. Got right up to the restaurant part about halfway through, or just a little before the restaurant, I think. And then at that point, I was like, okay, let's take a breather again, because there is a break in between when he goes into the apartment and visits the army friend. And
which one?
I know. There's so many, right? And
I learned one thing.
Hullo from the barracks.
Yeah, apparently being in the French army is really great for your networking.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. Well, I think it was still compulsory at that time.
Well, and Tati did serve in the army, so
He did.
But how did you get through the rest of it?
Yeah. I mean,
I want to know how this story ends.
I think I'll be honest, and you both may differ in this opinion, but I could have watched a full film of only the restaurant. It shifted when it shifted into that movie for me. And I understand I understand the whole of it, and when one side sort of necessitates the other there. But as a service worker in part watching this, and then as a service worker,
Well,
you know,
but that is a lens you're going to come at.
but certainly there were a lot of instances that really tickled me. There was a number of people that I've served or have
I thought of you while
with.
I was watching it,
I mean,
actually.
the servers that there being that one just kind of whip who keeps giving away all of his best uniform because he gets shooed off the floor for ripping his pant. Then somebody else gets a tear, and then here's my jacket,
shoes.
and then here's my shoe
for parts.
Here's my tie.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you see like towards the end of the restaurant sequence, you just see him kind of dejectedly walking out. And I mean, there were just so many delightful moments.
The waiter who checks himself out in the mirror.
Yeah, he keeps
really
touching his hair the whole time.
That really vain waiter really got me. He got me.
That was a great one.
The dude in the tux who was clearly drinking wine off screen. That like always had to do just the black on his mouth.
Yes, that's oh my god, that's me every time. One glass of red wine,
and it's on. You're done.
You drunk.
You blush.
It's really embarrassing, actually.
I totally get where you're coming from, Chelsea. Like this movie is definitely not paced like a modern movie, and it sort of has that problem that really good sketch comedy can have, where like because it's so episodic, but there's not necessarily a story, and because you're resetting every 5 to 15 minutes, your brain just gets tired. Because I literally did exactly what you did about a year and a half ago. It was 2 a.m. I heard this thing was great. I got super baked, got about 8 minutes in and was like, I can tell this is going to be awesome, but like, I can't.
I'm not in the right headspace to just like coast through this particular viewing. In some cases, it's like easier. Like Elvira was an easy coast, and then I ended up getting really invested in it in a different way. But like, I do appreciate that you brought up sketches, you know, because there were the different vignettes. The way that the beats of these sort of sketches or these jokes, if you will, they were stretched out quite a bit, and there'd be a lot happening in between. And I think about like the bus sequence, for instance, which was one of my favorite parts. You know, at one point, you know, the guy comes on with the coat rack, and right away you're like, oh, that's going to look like a pole. How are they going to deal with that? And so a bunch of people are grabbing it, and then then when Hulo gets on, and then all of a sudden he's getting on the other one because there's too many people now. And then there's swings, he grabs it and is holding them, and at the very end, you know, when he's not even paying attention, he just walks with the pole off of the bus.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that was like, I just liked the progression of how they paid that off over time. There were, you know, beautiful sequences happening in between each of those beats.
Oh, totally.
It's a slow burn. That part, that sketch.
That's exactly the word I was thinking. It's just, it will get there when it gets there.
Yeah.
And like he's really interested in every situation, milking every possible variation on a gag you could do in that situation. And like, because his frame is so big, it lets him let all of them breathe. And he like, I think I timed it out in my notes. There's not really a hard joke in this thing until 15 minutes in, when the security guy opens up the like intercom, and it's suddenly just this like giant computer, and like that's such a great gag. And then to follow that with that like long
hallway
shot of the guy coming down the hallway,
click,
which is
click.
Oh my god!
No, and I love the security guard who's like keeps kind of gesturing like, no, relax. You don't have to get up yet. Relax. You know, he keeps taking another drag on the cigarette that you think he's done with, and like, just to show just how long it takes for this guy to walk down this hallway. And then I love when the guy's almost there. The security guard like gestures for him to get up as if he's a fool. Like he's just like, get up. You know, what are you doing? You know?
Oh yeah, everybody treats Hulo like he just is a rube, when really he seems to know what's going on. He's just
I was thinking about how, I mean, swept around, that's such the right phrase, because the furniture that bounces back, the slipperiness of everything, like he cannot make a mark on this world. He just slips off of it. Like
even in the nightclub, like as the place is sort of like falling apart. Like the American guy kind of co-ops everything.
I hated that guy.
That guy was the worst.
Hated him.
Turning the thing into a door. Oh, you can come in.
It was pretty clear they had a low opinion of Americans, and I'm not mad about it.
Yeah, every American in this movie is
a dick.
complete asshole.
Is a boob at best.
A boob at best.
I think of the women that they're going into the French convention, and my favorite line is like, they even have American stuff. Like, come on, girls.
Yeah, that was so good.
I just remember early on, just like, oh, it's a very clean airport.
Yeah, it's so fun.
Something about
or
a
even
discount.
Or even like the German guy in the like Office Expo, just like losing it at Hulo, and he's just sort of like, okay, so sorry.
All right, whatever.
Oh, I love when he walks away from that. He's just very slowly like few steps and
like
when he slams that door and it's dead silent, I laughed like an idiot.
I mean, I thought what was funny about that was like the thought that you will never hear anyone knock on your door. Like that door is a fool's door.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And while he's like campaigning about it, there's someone sitting at that desk, like opening the drawers, and it sounds like metal scraping against metal. It's like,
that guy's making so much noise, and they're just completely aloof.
yeah.
There was also like the electric broom thing. There were those glasses that you could flip up one side so you could do your mascara. Like there were all these there were also a lot of like real brands though being used and dropped. Like I saw Philips.
I was surprised to see Avis in there.
Yeah, I saw Avis too.
I love that shot where it's of a woman going in somewhere, and in the reflection in the door, you can see the Eiffel Tower.
Totally.
And the only time you see it
Paris.
or any of the like, and it's a really beautiful moment that it just kind of like
it is a nice
on.
moment. Yeah.
And then it's just kind of back to the comedy of it. Like these people don't even see the beautiful thing that they're in right now because they're in the rat race.
The length of time that paused on that it was like a very sentimental moment. And of course it was like also in a warm tone, which contrasted.
Yeah.
I mean, anything that wasn't blue or gray just popped.
Which I think is why the cabaret pops too, because it's the next time you see any like warm wood or that's also the first time you see any person of color in the movie.
And he's like turned away immediately, and that's like, oh wait, you're in the band. Like, which I mean, that was very
like,
real.
Oh, right, the 60s.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That felt like critique, though. Like
Yeah, fair.
I didn't. I mean, to.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I felt like that was a very on point moment.
Yeah, I mean,
that band was good.
It was a fun scene. Anytime I see anything set in, I mean, I know this technically was in Paris. It was a set, but like anytime something's set in Paris, I'm always like, oh damn it.
Yeah,
like it just looks nicer, funner, like aesthetically cooler.
There were very satisfying shots, even in some of those. I mean, just the symmetry, the scope. I certainly enjoyed all of the night shots. I find something very inherently romantic about being in a city at night. That's with that kind of movement. I really liked that break of dawn when everyone came out of the nightclub and slowly kind of bustled over to the drugstore. I loved the feeling of that. You see the street mop.
One of my favorite
truck going through.
Yeah, the street cleaner. Yeah, I liked that it was essentially just one long day. But
that's the one of the few moments where there's like a clarity and calmness to it.
Yeah, that like
people are just kind of like walking around, but not like to go somewhere. It's just like, oh hey, we're awake.
Yeah. Yeah, it does kind of feel like everybody starts very robotic and it just gets more and more loosened. I think one of my favorite things was someone shouts out, "Oh, it's the same thing every night."
I know, I love that. That was so
After
funny.
like the most specifically unique set of occurrences, it was like, God, I love the jadedness of that. Like,
it was just, I love the people are just, they take the absurdities of what's happening as par for the course. Like they're just, they're very unfazed. I mean, so many people were just like, well, I'm gonna get my money's worth, even as the place is falling apart. It's like boiling in there, or, that plane deflates behind the bartender,
and like they're opening a restaurant and like the paint isn't dry yet. Like it reminded me of a reality show, right?
Sort
Like
of did, yeah.
The rush.
yeah. I've never worked in a restaurant in any way. I mean, I feel like a restaurant, a person who started a restaurant, I feel like would see that and really get a kick out of it. Like, because it does feel like, again, hyperbole about that business. And,
yes.
And
no,
I mean,
there's really actually quite a bit of truth to the idea of something like I'm about to go back to a restaurant that's just getting finished renovated.
The paint isn't dry yet.
I've trained at restaurants where we're sitting when there's hardcore tool, like I'm trying to do a wine tasting and there's sawdust and like I've been in that kind of.
So it's not that unrealistic.
No, it really actually isn't, and like the clientele and the table changing and the
those chairs.
Those
Have you ever had to work the invisible door?
Oh, that was one of my favorite things. He just leans into it and he's just like, well, I have to put. He's like putting value. Like Hulo shows him he's not intentionally even. He's just kind of like, okay, well.
I just love when he tried to keep out that drunk and
then they can't. Just walk.
He like went through this whole charade of like, oh my god,
this is the door. Like
so.
And then later on, he's still using it. Like he has it as an ashtray at one point. He's using it to take tips.
Yeah.
He's really making the best of a kind of wild night.
Yeah, and
Such
I mean, this thing we were talking about, like how it was a bit of a challenging viewing. I mean, maybe it does require like a certain. I felt like very fatigued, I think, halfway through because I think I was searching the frame constantly. And, right, and it sort of is demanding that. But I wonder if I watched this at home on a television. I was not in a large theater. I can only imagine how much better and more interesting this would feel if it was on a screen that could handle 70 mil. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I would love to see this in 70 millimeter. I mean, I love to see a movie in the biggest form possible.
That's like how it should be done.
70 millimeter is the best way to see something gigantic, like just the sheer depth of it. They also shot like The Master on 70 millimeter.
Oh, and Lawrence of Arabia, and big movies.
Arabia,
yeah. No, it's a bit of a like. You kind of put your dick on the table when you demand 70 millimeter.
Yeah.
It's like we're making a Bible epic here. We need all and like stereoscope and.
I would truly like to sit in a theater and to get that feeling of being inside this. It's the atmosphere of it. It's not even. It
bears more than one viewing, and like you sort of have to have it wash over you because it seems like it's a cumulative effect. I think that's what we're kind of dancing around.
I'd love to sit in a big dark theater and have just all of those wide shots just wash over me is what it is.
Yeah, and I mean, this film's influenced lots of filmmakers. David Lynch has cited this as a huge influence. Wes Anderson, Steven Spielberg, the film Terminal. He actually he built a whole airport terminal, and it was because he knew Tati did the same thing. And wanted to give Tom Hanks, I think, that same kind of big space to work in. I don't know what happened, but that's for another discussion.
I might butcher this name. Sylvain Chomet, who made Triplets of Belleville, is also a noted Tati person. Who one of his films recently was taken from a Tati pitch that never got finished, or a movie that never got made, or something. It was that kind of thing.
There would be so much mystique around that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I'm going to go ahead and take this opportunity to talk a little bit about our director, since we're sort of hovering around the legend of Tati. Going to get into the director's chair. Yeah. Okay, so Jacques Tati was actually born Jacques Tatishev. He's a descendant of Russian nobility. He was born in 1908 and he passed away in 1982. He is generally considered a innovative and influential comic filmmaker of the 20th century. This guy is, as you've been hearing us say, he's a big deal and he's interesting. He's a French filmmaker, a comic actor. He portrays people in conflict with the mechanized modern world, which, I mean, Playtime is probably the strongest example of this, right?
I went back after I watched Playtime just to get a sense of some of his other stuff, and I watched a tiny little bit of Mon Oncle.
That won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Film in 1958.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, 1958. So that and the same character. That's the thing. This filmmaker wrote and starred in all 6 features that he directed, and in 4 of them, he's playing this Hulot character. And so he's Hulot in Mr. Hulot's Wedding, Mon Oncle, also The Big Day. and then Playtime. But he, it's similar to like Stan Laurel or Buster Keaton. He's playing this sort of, you described him as a bit of a Mr. Magoo. He's got this very like affable, innocent but quizzical nature. Just another note about Tati though, he was briefly a professional rugby player, which I just thought was interesting. He also and he was a music hall entertainer in the 1930s. So like music hall being like kind of the vaudeville of Europe, to put it. I mean, it's more complicated than that.
It's where all the songs from the Muppet Show came from, old British music hall shows.
And like every band from the 60s in England has some weird little music hall like type song that they do. Like they all do it. And
like a skiffle song.
Her Majesty by the Beatles. Like,
I love Her
Majesty's
Majesty.
a pretty nice girl. Anyway, that's music hall. Okay, what? He served in World War II. He served in the French Army. He's made several films. I won't list them all. You can go find them, folks. But this movie, Playtime, it bankrupted him.
Yeah, it like destroyed his life.
It really did. Like, I mean, he lost his business. He lost his home. He lost his own films. Like, he had to. Everything had to be sold.
There's a clip on because I watched this on the Criterion Channel. And there's an interview with Terry Jones from Monty Python.
Yeah, right. He introduced it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he introduced one of the versions, and he talks about the movie for like 5-6 minutes. And he tells the story, and they show a clip of it tearing down Tativille. Essentially, he was so in the hole and like so pissed off about it that as they're like knocking down one of the buildings, he took a print of the film and just throws it at the building as it's coming down, and then has to like run to get out of the way and not get smashed.
Oh my God.
It's wild and
frustrated.
Because that interview very specifically portrays Tati as this kind of like not enfant terrible, but very much like he knows what he's doing, and like he knew he had to do this even if it was gonna like destroy his entire life.
I mean, I hope it was worth it. I mean, I guess it is, because here we are talking about it many, many, many years later. But I don't know. Ask him. Maybe he wouldn't say that, because some people say the next two films and last two films he directed, they have a kind of melancholy about them because, he's carrying...
Maybe this broke him whimsically.
Critically, of course, it was very well received. It was just a commercial failure. And that's not just... I mean, that's a huge deal, especially when you've made the most expensive movie yet, like in your nation's history.
Oh yeah.
But he did point out, like, Tativille took like 100 workers to build and suffered all kinds of damage that they had to repair and all these things. But he pointed out that, like, but listen, if we would have wanted to get Elizabeth Taylor or Sophia Loren to play the main part in this, it would have cost us the same. He went out of pocket personally for this. He believed in this. Like
Oh yeah.
It just didn't. It didn't pay off though. The gamble for him financially.
It's very much a masterwork in the most classical sense of like, this is a master at the height of his craft, constructing a thing that only he could make, that even if it's not going to resonate hugely commercially, this is the clearest example of like what Jacques Tati is about. The sheer willingness to go after that is both impressive and also a little like sociopathic.
Oh yeah, you have to be a little bit deaf, right?
Yeah.
Like to be like creative. You have to kind of ignore other people because they don't know.
Yep, I could definitely see him in that same school as like Kubrick, but like the jokes are better.
Yeah, I don't know. I love Kubrick as a
me too.
comedian. I think he's pretty funny.
Comparing this to older sort of stuff like Abbott and Costello or Laurel and Hardy or like the Marx Brothers, like that, or like I guess a more apt will probably be like Keaton or Chaplin. My understanding is that oh wait, no, it wasn't Tati, it was Jackie Chan that loved Buster Keaton, which I heard you guys talking about when I listened to your Police Story episode.
Awesome.
That's what it was. I almost related a story you guys told back to you incorrectly.
Wow, I mean
flattering.
it actually is flattering.
Praise.
No, that's
Your
great.
awesome Police Story episode.
Oh, thank you. That was so much fun. Honestly, that was a fun movie. This was a fun movie too, in a different way.
Yes.
A different way.
Yeah, but I think there's a level of artistry, like cinematically, in this movie that those films don't have. Both by virtue of the language of cinema grew so exponentially in the like 30, 40 years between, Laurel and Hardy and Playtime. By that point, we knew how to say a lot more with a film, rather than just putting the camera on your two guys while they do a little dance. It's like you couldn't have done this movie without, Laurel and Hardy doing that, or Buster Keaton being on that train.
Sure.
This just has so much more power as an artistic statement, because I think, well, also in that fact that Tati himself directed it. Like, the Marx Brothers weren't out there directing their own movies. That would have probably been a disaster. But,
yeah. I don't know how they'd work that out.
God, yeah. They'd probably let Zeppo do it, honestly.
Get their mom back from the dead. Minnie.
Their mom's name is Minnie Marks? That rules.
I think so. I mean, I know. Everybody was a Minnie or a Millie or a Tilly or a
Mitzi.
Elsie or a Mitzi. Yeah, that's a good one.
The one thing I did want to cover that we sort of haven't is, like, the sort of main visual metaphor of this movie is kind of city life is a zoo, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
The shot that they use, I think, as the Criterion image is Hulo looking down to that accounting office, which just looks like someone at a zoo looking down into a bunch of cages with animals in it.
A pit.
That's a pretty easy metaphor. Anyone can get to. Oh yeah, living in the city is like living in a zoo, but like he finds so many different and specific ways to express that. It keeps it so interesting. Like he uses every part of the buffalo in a lot of ways, because like the metaphor of the accounting scene is completely different than the metaphor of like the scene where it's outside the apartment and you're watching Hulo and one of his army buddies like drink and watch TV, and it never cuts inside the entire time. It just holds on the street and all you hear is like ambient city noise, which is just a different variation on the same metaphor. And he just so effortlessly spins every single thing he tries to say as many times and as far as he can.
Yeah, there's a lot of iterations of the same concept, and like
it's very iterative.
Yeah, it's like it is a cumulative effect. I totally hear you about that zoo feeling. I thought the same thing during that scene with the apartment buildings that have just those glass walls looking out onto the street, and it was like, it was kind of restful again, like, because you don't hear anything. But it was also kind of like there's always something a little sad about the glow of like a TV screen on a face and the sort of half dark. Like and I think glass is playing a huge role in this movie, and like, both as something that's deceptive. I mean, even that when that one glass door breaks and they sweep up all the glass, it ends up becoming ice in people's like and it's and it's someone's like holding a piece up to their head, realizing it doesn't work. I mean, it's just there's nothing wasted. You're absolutely right about that. Like there's not a way. Everything is a callback eventually, and there's continuity. I did notice in the credits there were 3 script girls, which this today would be called a script supervisor.
I also took note of script girls, and like, wow, it's the 60s.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the term it was for a long time. It's sometimes still said, not usually, but script supervisor. It really should just be called continuity, like director of continuity.
Actually, I also want to point out in the opening credits, I was tickled when I went back and saw that there were all these names, and then at the end, and a group of American tourists.
I saw that, yeah.
And it was who, and I mean, in many cases, they steal the scenes. So
they really did,
but it's such an afterthought.
I mean, and just in a narcissistic note, I noticed in the credits a name, Bob Harley. I just thought that was funny. That's my last name.
I watched the opening credits for Mon Oncle. They're all built onto actual signposts. So it looks like one of those things that you would like put outside of a shopping mall, where it's just like a list of stores and stuff. And so the first few shots of that movie are these construction sites with these like coming soon signs, director, actors, script girls, all that stuff. And it's a really interesting way to do it, to like build your credits.
Sometimes titles can be really, really distinct and send messages, and like sometimes we'll spend some time really talking about titles. I felt like the ones for today's film, the only thing I really noted was just like, oh, it's against the sky, like the blue sky. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh yeah,
felt optimistic. It's like I thought it was
very
day.
Like, it's just like take a deep breath before we,
Yeah.
before we dive
Enjoy
into
this.
Yeah, enjoy this
right.
brief respite. And then, towards the end, there is like a sort of a bookend type shot where it pans up to the sky. And I actually thought the credits were going to roll then, but then it didn't.
Yeah,
then we go back to the bus,
airport.
to the airport. But then we do
I did like
eventually-
that last shot, though.
It was beautiful.
There's something, again, restful. Like,
Yeah,
again,
I love city shots at night. And
I'm with you there.
There's something very ethereal
same.
about it.
There's an amazing, if you go on YouTube, Google, I think it's called like Night Walk Ontario or something like that. And it was this thing that they used to air on Canadian TV that was just someone holding a camera walking through like Toronto at
there's
night while
totally
smooth
videos
jazz
of
plays.
that. There's videos of just people walking through all types of cities. I
That's
just started
genius.
watching
Rules.
that stuff. It's so
good.
It's very soothing.
Wow. God, they should just
Yeah.
have that on in like doctors' offices and DMVs. And
They should. It beats the daytime television that I have to sit through when I'm waiting for
yeah.
the OBGYN.
I would rather watch a like Tokyo elevated train line than Dr. Phil.
Yeah.
there's a
truly.
lot of things I'd watch over Dr. Phil, though,
Yeah.
It's a long list of things.
It puts me in a state of distress before my appointment. It's like, no, I'd love to just be like
Yeah.
watching just people vibing in a city.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like nature sounds, but for the eyes.
Oh, yeah.
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 And this is the sort of movie that you could just kind of like put on. Like if you just had this like projected on a wall at the back of a party.
Coolest
like, that would
party
be really
ever.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think you just got an idea for a theme party that you're going to invite us to, right?
I'm absolutely going to do that when I have my housewarming party.
Awesome.
I love
yeah.
it.
Yeah, the new place. I
love that.
Yeah.
Cool. I love it. And we could all dress in gray suits.
Or do coats and a coat check and I'll do that fun gag.
Oh,
as
that
well.
coat check woman getting caught, like
Yeah.
jacket off.
Like she
smoking
had
a
half
cigarette.
of hers on, and then she went to go take the other ones off, and then so the other attendant went up to put the other half of her jacket on while she's taking the jacket off the other lady.
It's so funny that we keep having these little recollections bubble
by
up.
the way,
We're like, oh right, and then there was that thing. Like this movie is chock full. It's
so dense.
yeah.
And like I love that literally every time someone is like they think they're not being watched, they're just immediately smoking.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's a great symbol. That's such a good point, actually.
Oh yeah, very French, but also very honest. Because like, if you made this movie today, every time the camera was away, someone would just be vaping.
Oh yeah.
I was wondering, what you guys might think about what a modern day version of this would be like if somebody
Lord.
took this on as an undertaking.
I'm scared. I'm scared to like breathe this idea into the world because I feel like somebody would just bumble their way into this and think they could do. This took 3 fucking years. Like, and editing took like 9 months.
So you smug assholes out there,
I'm
who
just
think
saying,
you
I'm
can
mad.
Make a Tati movie.
This is like comedy apocalypse now.
I just want to discourage people from this folly. We did The Heartbreak Kid recently, and that was remade into a terrible remake.
But it made hand over fist, and there are people,
it did really well.
There are people on YouTube actually, because I watched The Heartbreak Kid on YouTube, and there's a solid amount of dislikes on the original film, and a number of people in the comments going remake better, and it's like
whatever.
Which is, I would hate to see that happen.
Nah, dog.
It's like, I mean, obviously,
But
it's
people
easy
do-
for us to be anti-remake or on our soapbox, but
some remakes or whatever. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't want to put the kibosh on all remakes ever. That would be foolish.
Because when we did
short-sighted.
Suspiria, and I honestly felt like the remake was really strong for that one. So, or reimagining, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes we have a funny attitude about remakes, and that like when you watch like really old movies, like you realize like everything in the silent era got remade for sound, and then got remade again for color, and then got remade. It's like, I don't know. CGI has definitely taken a hand. I mean, I wonder what this movie would, with the aid of computers, would this movie would have even been possible? Because I mean, that shot you were describing earlier, where he's looking down onto the sort of cubicles didn't exist yet. Like he kind of.
Oh, that's true.
Like he really thought of that. Like and by the way, I would love that office over an open floor plan. I would totally take that fucking office.
I mean, my day job is I'm a production accountant, and that's what our office looks like almost exactly. No, but I wish.
Yeah, like not as cool. Yeah. I don't know where I was going with that.
The computers are ruining CGI.
I just think there's some creative problem solving going on. They built a whole city for this.
Practical effects.
I don't think we would do
practical
that today.
effects. Bring them back,
There
man.
we go. That's what I was trying to do. Thank you, Chelsea.
Yeah.
And that like so much of the magic of this movie is in people moving in front of the camera, which like
it's just the behavior.
You can't really fix that with CGI.
Well,
even like
somebody thinks they can't. Trust me. No, I know what you're saying.
You know, we were talking about all these people who are inspired by Playtime. I mean, there's so many to think of, but specifically, I'm now realizing that there was so much pulled from Tati for Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. There are a number of continuous shots. There's like the wide shot of when they go to the Hamptons season 2 that reminds me so much of this film. And, you know, the reception shot that, you know, it's in season 1 when she's gotten so good at the call boards and she's going around in her seat. And like, I think there's a number of instances that are paying homage, especially since they're in a similar time period, well, late 50s, early 60s. But like, I just think it's curious, you know, that it's gotten, that show in particular has gotten a lot of, you know, praise for its production design. And it's like, well, I see so much of that in this.
I mean,
you know,
like when you know, television used to be referred to as the small screen. And when you see like the TV setup for most people, like in this era, let's say, you know, it's very obvious why movies were king, you know. We're in like a different time now, though, where like people are viewing television much more like they used to treat cinema. But I still think that TV lacks that space that like movies like this has to make you settle. It like changes your pulse almost. Like
totally.
It's not about propelling a plot forward necessarily. And this film is definitely, it rejects a classic narrative kind of structure. It's more of like vignettes, and you know, as we said, it's a cumulative, almost
very episodic.
Yeah, it's very slice of life as well. Like I was thinking about that Nathan Fielder or Nathan For You episode.
where
it's the
choreographed bar scene.
Exactly, the smokers allowed.
Oh my God, you're right. You're right. That's so fucking Tati. Oh my God.
And then at the end, they show them side by side, which is like so impressive how well timed all of the movements of the actors to the original footage.
I mean, I could go on and on about how impressive I find Nathan Fielder.
That show is a miracle.
It really is.
That works. It isn't like hateful and like taking advantage of people. It's a fucking miracle.
I find some people who find it hard to watch. Like
I see that.
They find it mean. I don't. But
if this bothers you, what else? And
I'm just, he's a sociologist. He's showing like
he's
what
a
we
satirist,
do.
You know,
Anyway, genius. But yeah, I can see influence here. I mean, like anything we discuss on this podcast, you know, things are worth a watch, if nothing else, just for like the cultural reference and the information, and to now go forward and everything, you can be like, oh, that's very Tati, you know, and how wonderfully pretentious, powerful is that, right?
Yeah.
We can now lord this over people. I love it. And even if you don't watch the movie,
if you like have an interest in comedy and like the history of comedy, because there aren't a lot of like comedy directors that are kind of held in that sort of upper echelon of like serious film directors. And I feel like Tati does get held up there in the way that like Woody Allen used to.
You know, Chaplin and Keaton and those guys who, and I know there's silent film, but yeah, I mean, these people who created a persona and were writing, directing, and starring in their own work. I mean, we don't see that very often at all. Just, you know, full stop. Like it's why we celebrated Elaine May in our first episode, because she pulled that shit off when there was
I love Elaine May.
Oh man, well, we got Heartbreak Kid is coming, and our very first episode was about her.
A New Leaf.
Yeah, A New Leaf. We haven't intentionally maybe tried to just go to these like strange comedy places, but I'm really enjoying seeing this. Like, I'm getting a richer history, I think, of the tradition just by viewing things like this, and I learned that Tati and this character he created, you know, he kind of got a little, he kind of wanted to distance himself from it. Like he got a little trapped in the Hulot thing because, you know, Mon Oncle was such a success, and
he just keeps doing. Sorry, my
cat. I love that your cat has been in and out.
Having her own playtime right now.
Yes,
she's doing a little ballet around my microphone and onto my preamp.
Your whole Zoom screen is like a little slice of life. We gotta get a little playtime in the background.
Oh yeah, we'll watch her go down the hallway for half an hour.
Yeah, and she'll make a sharp right turn.
And I'm just gonna be here smoking while I wait.
I mean, that's like the funny thing. It's only about what's in frame and how it looks on camera. And
a lot of the steel wasn't actually steel. They basically just like got a picture of steel, blew it up really big, and printed it out. So like most of those walls are like essentially paper.
that's really cool, actually.
That's cool.
Yeah, right? It kind of rules.
Yeah, fuck it. Like paper people, paper walls. Like who needs... We don't need to do this for real.
It's playtime.
Oh, yeah.
It's playtime.
It's playtime.
Playtime.
It's playtime.
And there's a lot of older style comedy and like commedia dell'arte and stuff like that plays a lot on just like the juxtaposition of energies. So like Hulo will often be paired with someone like the German guy who's just yelling and screaming,
Really high
and
strung,
flying around and being very erratic, and then every move it makes every move that Hulo does look so much smaller and more delicate and specific. And he spends so much of the movie like playing energies like that off of each other. Like there's that sequence, there's a lot of it. Most of the scene in the apartment is kind of built around that. Only we're just not hearing the audio. Actually, there was also a moment in that sequence when after Hulo's left and you're just watching the guy take his coat off, and then the woman next door, they're both watching TV, but it's framed so it looks like they're just in a cage and they're just looking at each other, so it looks like he's stripping for her. And it becomes this very like animal thing. But it reminded me of a gag from Down with Love.
Yeah, I love Down with Love.
It's one of my favorite movies, and like criminally underrated. But there's a gag in there where Ewan McGregor and Renee Zellweger are talking on the phone, and they have this like lusty, unrequited romance, and it's the two of them while they're on the phone just like working out. So like it'll be framed like a Zoom call,
Like a split screen.
up top doing like push-ups, and Renee Zellweger on the bottom like lying down like splayed out, like it's this like split screen sex scene. And I was wondering if that had I could imagine Peyton Reed being a Tati fan.
Oh, yeah.
There's enough of a grasp on physical comedy to I feel like there could have been some Tati in there.
How do you physically dramatize or cometize?
Cometize.
Is that a thing? Cometize?
Cometize me, Captain.
How do you
Cometize.
cometize. How do you do that?
Yeah.
You know, and there were just a lot of moments that felt wordless and wonderful. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wordless and
Yeah.
wonderful.
Any other thoughts,
No,
Chelsea?
I feel
All right.
wordless and wonderful right now.
Well, Brandon, Beck, where should people, if they want to follow you or find you, plug your projects?
Well, you can find me all over the internet at Hell Yes Brandon on all of the various socials. I co-host the currently on hiatus podcast, I Think You'd Be Into It, with Beth Scorzato, where it's an enthusiast show where people come on and talk about a thing that they really, really love, and, their friends are sick of hearing about. And you can find my musical stuff at brandonbeck.bandcamp.com, and my band, Inappropriate Things. We have a couple gigs coming up in November and December. One's in Santa Monica, one's in Hollywood. One's in Santa Monica, one's in Hollywood. I don't remember exactly.
Oh, okay. No worries.
Off the dome.
It's all good. It's all
Apparently
good.
One of them is at a pirate-themed bar,
Awesome.
which is I'm going to try to take a Captain Hook and replace it with a guitar slide and see if I can make that work. Yeah, I think that's everything. That's
a lot.
That's
I think that's all
You're
my stuff
busy,
these
busy
days.
man.
Well, I mean, thank you so much for making time. Not just making time, but I mean, being so enthusiastic.
Oh yeah, I like this was a movie that I'd been meaning to watch for a very long time. I'm pretty sure I've even owned this movie at some point. When I saw the list of potential movies, Playtime was the first one where I was like, I've been meaning to fucking watch that. And I kept procrastinating on it because I knew it was long. But like when I finally got around to watching it, I was like, oh my god, this is like legitimately one of the like most impressive things I've ever seen, and like an actual masterpiece. Yeah, it was a really good breath of fresh movie.
Oh,
there
speaking
it
of, my last when he never fixed the light for those ladies, they just handed him the light at the convention, and then he goes and plugs it in. And they're like, That's how I feel when I watch a breath of fresh. When I watch a fresh movie. There you go. Yeah, there you go.
Thanks for listening to A Breath of Fresh Movie. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at FreshMoviePod, or you can send us an email at abreathoffreshmovie@gmail.com.